Hashem, today's Daf Yomi is Menachos Samach Zayin, Menachos 67. We're going to start on the bottom of 66b, around 15 lines from the bottom, where the Gemara says, Amar Rava. Shitoli, Rava says, it's obvious to me that Miruach Hektish is poter, that if there's a piling up of the grain while it's still owned by the temple, then it exempts it from Meiser. Vafilu Rabbi Akiva, even on Rabbi Akiva, who says that Miruach Hektish is Chayev, will come a Chayev Hasam, El Shol Nitnu Mos El Tzarech Lahen. Aval Miruach Hektish Ba'alma Poter, that even though Rabbi Akiva, who says that the Omer is Chayev and Meiser, the extra money, that's not because he says in general Miruach Hektish is Poter, but it's because that when the money was given for the Omer, it was only given for that specific barley that was used for the Omer, but the rest was never really consecrated. But the question really is, Miruach Ove Kochavim. Let's say there's the Miruach of the idolater. What does that mean? Basically, somebody who purchases, so the Miruach of the Kochavim, there's basically a question, what does this mean? It's either crops that are owned by the idolater, but that's actually not the main idea. The main idea of Tosfos and the Rosh is that the position of Tosfos and Rosh is that the idolater owns it at the time, but the position of the Rimi Korbei and the Shita Mekubetzes is the Miruach of the Kochavim is that the action of Miruach was done by an idolater. And even though that's less intuitive, that seems to fit with the conclusion of the Gemara. The Rambam says both, either one of them would exempt. But anyway, so that's the question here of Rava. Miruach Ove Kochavim Tanai. He says that if the Miruach was done by an idolater or was owned by an idolater, that's a Mechokas Tanaim. The Tanya, Tormin Mishal Yisrael, Ashal Yisrael, that if a Jew has crops and he wants to be mitaking the crops for Truma, to take Truma, he could take it from another Jew's crops and tithe on the other crops. And from one idolater's crops on another idolater's crops. And from kuti is, let's say, a Suffolk Jew, we're not sure if they're Jewish, you can do it from one kuti for another kuti. And actually, you can combine all of these crops from whichever he wants can be tithed for the other. And according to this position, it seems that Miruach Ovek Chavim is Chayev b'Meiser and Truma. That's the position of Rabbi Meir. Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon Omrim, Tom Mishal Yisrael, Shal Yisrael, Mishal Ovdei Chavim, Al Shal Kutiyim, Mishal Kutiyim, Al Shal Ovdei Chavim, but Avalom Mishal Yisrael, Al Shal Ovdei Chavim, Mishal Kutiyim, but not from a Jew for the idolater's crops. So Mishal Ovdei Chavim, Mishal Kutiyim, Al Shal Yisrael. So according to the second approach, that you're not really required to tithe from an idolater, so therefore will not exempt. So therefore, according to this other approach, we would exempt the crops from Meiser, and therefore you can't take it from a Jew's crop on their crop on the idolaters, or from the idolaters for the Jews, because according to the second opinion, there really is an exemption. So, and that would be what's called Minach Ptur al Chiyuv and Minach Chiyuv al Ptur. But what about the Gilgul Hektish? So Gilgul Hektish. So first of all, what's Gilgul? So Gilgul is the moment where the flour touches the water. So we want to know at that point, Rashi says, let's say the idolater owns the flour and the water. At the moment it becomes chayiv and chala. So at that moment, hold on 1 second. So at that moment of where the flour and the water come together, that's where he's going to be chayev in. That's the moment where he's chayev. Gilgul Hektish L'Yachala poter minachawa. So Rashi basically explains if at the moment the flour touched the water and it's owned by an idolater at that point, then or hektish, gilgal hektish, if it's owned by the hektish, then and afterwards it was redeemed. At that moment, since it was owned by hektish, you're not chayav and chala, therefore it's exempt from chala. It's not, as we learned in the Mishnah in Maseches Chala, Hiktisha Isasa. Let's say he consecrated the dough or the achlo gilgula before the water was added, upadasa, and then he redeemed it, chayeves. Then he's going to be liable in chala. But misha gilgula ufadisa. But let's say it became dough and then he redeemed it. Then he's obligated. But hikdisha achlo gilgula. Let's say consecrated before the flour and water was added together. The gilgula, and then he added the flour and the water. The gilgula gizbar v'achkak padasa, and the treasurer put the flour and the water together, and then it was redeemed. Petura, then it's exempt. Shabashas chovasa, because at the moment that it was obligated in chala, so to speak, haisa petura, was exempt because it was owned by hektish. So by Rava, so now Rava asks another question. Gilgal obe kochavimai. What about if the idolater himself is the one who does the gilgal? The idolater is the one who mixes the flour and the water together. Do we say misna? Do we say what would be the halacha on that case? Is it going to be exempt? So misna tanam, we learned in the Mishnah in Chala, ger sheniskayer. Let's say you have a convert who's converted, v'haiselo isa, but he had dough beforehand. Haiselo isis nasis achlo niskayer, and it became dough before he converted. So at the moment the chala was obligated, he wasn't Jewish. So then we're going to say potter, but misha niskayer. But if it became dough after he converted, chayiv, then he'd be obligated to give the chala. Suffix chayev, suffix. But if it was be a doubt, then we're going to say, sit down, Arik, sit down. Where's Ayal? No, you're not. No, you're not. You can't fool me. There's Ayal. No, it's not Arik. No, you're not. You can't fool me. I know. I can tell them apart. Arik is like a nicer hairdo. He like more he keeps it. No, neater. I meant to say. Yeah, well, that's right. Okay, stop. We're recording this. Stop. We don't want to hear about this. No, I want to do the Gemara. Stop. So the Gemara says afterwards. I want to know why, but not now. So. Suffix, but let's say we're not sure whether or not it became, show them the place, it's on 67a. Let's say we're not sure when exactly it became dough before or after he converted chayiv. So the Gemara says, now, man katanila, who is the one who taught this Mishnah? Do we say divrei akoli, that it's going according to everybody? Vafilu Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, the Kamachayvi Hasam, even according to Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Meir, who said, by the Miruach Ove Kochavim on Samach Vavam Abayz, who said that you're obligated to tithe it. We're going to say the Kamchayvi Hasam Patri. So in that case, that even there that they would say that you're obligated over there, Patriacha. Here they would say exempt. The reason why Miruach Ove Kochavim you're chayiv is because Hasam Udachsiv. It says by the tithing digancha. It says the word digancha twice. It says digancha. It says it several times. So we see from here yisera. It's an extra one to darshan. And what do we darshan from the extra one? We darshan this idea that you're going to be obligated, even if it's miruch or vekochavim. So it says, actually it's written 3 times, digancha, and so therefore the first time digancha we teach us diguncha and not the dagon of hektish, and the second one teaches us digancha that the 2 extra ones that are extra are coming to teach us diguncha v'lo digun over kochavim. That's teaching us that the miruch over kochavim is pater. But then there is a third one which is miut achar miut. and that is a limitation after a limitation, and emiut achamut el rabos, a few of kavim. So we learn from there that it's teaching us even idolaters miroch is included. But here, trei zimni arisos techem ksiv. Here it says by the challah, it says arisos techem, your dough twice. It says reishis arisos techem and merishis asisos techem. So achad arisos techem. One of them is to teach us kedei arisaslem. That the amount that it has to be is like the amount of dough that was done in the wilderness, which is omer for golgolos. And the other one is teach us not to eat dough of the hektish and not the dough of the idolater. O dilma, or maybe is this mission going according to everybody? Or maybe our mission is only according to Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, who say that the miruch of the idolater is chayiv. It's pater. Dilma Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon Kataniwa. The kapatri, that they are just like they exempt the miruch of the idolater, also they're going to exempt in this case. Of Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Gamri Rashis Mehasam. But Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, they learn Rashis from Meiser, just like your chayiv miruch of the chavim. Also, the miruch of the challah of the idolater, you're also going to be chayiv. So the Gemara wants to know basically if it became dough while it was owned by an idolater, are they obligated in the mitzvah of challah? Do you know what challah is? The mitzvah of challah. The mitzvah of challah is they have to take a portion of your dough, if it's a certain amount. We'll see the amount on tomorrow on the Amud Beis, and give it to the Kohen as a gift. Today we don't give it to a Kohen; we burn it because we don't know who's really a Kohen, and also the Kohen, because we don't have a complete tradition. Also, the Kohen can't eat it in a state of ritual purity because they're not pure enough to eat it. But there is one point about the mitzvah of challah that I'll never forget. You can look this up and you'll find this at the beginning of the war with Hamas. There was a woman who was taken hostage, and her grandmother had never ever done the mitzvah of challah, and she did it for the first time. And the very next day, the girl was miraculously saved. Yeah, look it up. You'll see. So Amar Rava. Rava says in this context, yeah, hey, Rava, write down your questions. Yeah, you should certainly do it. A lot of people take the challah and they say the bracha on it. Amar Rava, well, hafrish challah min ha'isa. The step, or al hafrashas challah. It's a question. Anyway, Amar Rava, yeh Rava de'achzaye bechalma. Rava says, it may be the will of God that I'll see in a dream the answer to this law. Meaning, they say, I pray that I should get the answer from Shemayim. Hadar Amar Rava. Then Rava said, I have the answer. It doesn't mean he got in a dream. He went back to school and studied. And he said, Manda Amar Meruch Ovi Kochavim. The one who says that Ruvi Kochavim is Pater, i.e. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, would also say Gilgal Ovi Kochavim is Pater. Would also say that the challah, if it became dough while it's in the area owned by the idolaters, it's also exempt. Manda Amar Meruch Ovi Kochavim Eino Pater. The one who says that Meruch Ovi Kochavim is not Pater, which is the position of Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda, Gilgal v'Kavim Eino Poter, would also say that Gilgal v'Kavim is not Poter. So the one who says Miruch v'Kavim is Poter, i.e. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, they would also say Gilgal v'Kavim. The one who says it's Chayiv would also say that the Gilgal v'Kavim is Chayiv. So the Gemara says, well, if that's the case, let's analyze Rava's position. Eisvei Rav Papa Rava Ovi Kochavim. We have a brayta that tells us in Trumos Ovi Kochavim. So if there's an idolater that separated a lamb in order to redeem a Peter Chamor. So what's the mitzvah of Peter Chamor? I've done this mitzvah. I had the supposed to do it. That if you have a firstborn male donkey, you either have to kill it, or you can redeem it by giving the lamb to the Kohen. So let's say there's an idolater who owns a donkey and he wants to redeem it. And he also has some challah. And Modiimo, so we tell him there's no reason doing this. You're not Jewish. You don't have to keep this law. Modiimo toshu potter. You tell him that you don't have to do anything. You don't have to keep the mitzvos. These mitzvos. So the chalas are now chalas lazarim. Even a non-Kohen can eat the challah. The upeter chamor gozes va'ovepo. And the donkey is not holy either because it's an idolater and it doesn't have the sanctity of the Petra Chamor. So you shear it and you can work it. So the Gemara says, Hatrumaso Asura, from the fact that it says only about Chala and Petach Hamor, that means the idolater's Truma is prohibited. So this Tana is saying that that if the idolater has grain, it's still chayav in Truma. The Gilgal of Ikochavim, but yet the dough is butter. And there's another question. So we see that they don't line up the positions. Va'od Esvei, Ravina or Rava, and also Ravina asked the question to Rava. Chalas of Ikochavim ba'aretz. Let's say you have the challah of an idolater in the land of Israel, utrumaso b'chutz laaretz, or if you have his truma outside of Israel. Truma, you're only obligated in Israel. Modino so shu patur. You tell him you don't need to do this. Chaloso ne'chaloso zarim, utrumaso ena medames. You say that your challah could be eaten by non-kohanim, and your truma is not truma, meaning to say it doesn't make a mixture prohibited because it's outside of Israel. But the implication of that price is trumaso ba'aretz. But if his truma would be in the land of Israel, asura. So again, we see the positions don't line up. So explicitly, this price is saying that the meruch of the idolater you're still obligated in meiser. But the challah of it, you're not. But excuse me, just the opposite. The meruch of it, you're going to be chayev, and gilgal of it, you're potter. The Gemara says, okay, when we say that, when this Tana is saying that the idolater has to do challah, it's only midrabanan. It's only rabbinically. Why? Zera mishum balei kisin, because it's a decree because of the wealthy people. Balei kisin means they have big pockets. Why? Because Rashi says, I'll give you the second opinion of Rashi, that they have a lot of land, and they're worried about having to do a lot of meiser. Excuse me, when he says that the miruch of Ikchav is chayiv, that if the idolater owns the meiser, the crops, he's chayiv a meiser, that's only because of the decree about these balei kisim. That what? That really they should be pater, but we're worried the wealthy people are going to use this as a way of getting out of tithing. And so therefore they'll do like this, like we do with chametz. They'll do this legal fiction that they sell everything to the idolater. So the idolater technically owns their land. And therefore, since the idolater technically owns their land, as a consequence, they will get out of having to tithe. And so, write it down. I'll be with you in 5 minutes. I'll be with you in 5 minutes. So he says, so they basically, he'll get out of having to tithe. And because we don't want to do that, we don't want to let the people get out of having to give the gift to the Kohen and the Levi. So therefore, we say even if it's owned by the idolater, you have to tithe it. So the Gemara says, okay, also you could have the same concern about challah in 67b, that if the challah is too small, if the dough is too small, you can get it out of having to give the gift to the Kohen. So we could keep making it very small, smaller than a fifth chameshes revim, 5/4 of a cup of flour. And va'od, and furthermore, it wouldn't help. It wouldn't help. So the Gemara says, meaning it's a little bit more than 5/4 of a cup. So the Gemara says, and Truma Nami, also about Truma, you could have done the same thing. After the Avalok at Rabbi Oshaya, there's a way to get out of the Truma tithe. How so? Rabbi Oshaya, Marim Adam al Tfuah. So a person can get out of having to tithe the crops. How? By doing a legal fiction, by doing tricks. And what would he do? Machnisa b'mot shala. So he could bring the crop into his house while it's still inside its stalk, while it's still inside its husk. And then, so kadeshatei behimaso ochela, so that his animal will be able to eat from it. And then, upatur min hamaiser, meaning say you're not even supposed to feed your animal the untithed crops. But if you bring it in while it's still into your house, while it's still in its husk, you'd be exempt. Or inami, or if you take it into your house, but not through the front door, but through the rooftop, you're also exempt from the tithing. So we see from here that there's a way that you could get out of it. So the Gemara says, no. There, he wouldn't be willing. Elon, you know what? The only thing I was thinking, maybe put it in the warmer till right after Mincha Maariv. So do you know how to turn the warmer on, Elon? There's a little button at the bottom. Thank you, Elon. You're so good, Shema. So the Gemara says, Hasam b'farasia zila b'mil. So the guy's not going to want to get out of giving the challah by doing this legal fiction in public. Everybody will, get out of giving the truma by doing this legal fiction. So everybody will see. He'll be embarrassed to do it. He'll be so embarrassed. So he's not going to do that. But here, bitsina, here it's in private with the that he'll bake quest. They won't be embarrassed. And so therefore, if somebody wants to get out of the challah, you can do that without any concern. And so therefore, it wouldn't help if we made a decree to say that the challah of the idolater is also chayiv, because anyway, the guy would get out of it. So the Mishnah is going to continue discussing the laws of the Omer. It says the Mishnah, Yatzak ubalo, bolo lisaron. So let's say the Kohen gets this barley, the isaron of barley, and then he puts it's in the temple, and it has on it shamno avona. So he puts it in the utensil with the oil and the frankincense. Yatzak, he pours the oil on top of it. Ubao, he mixes it together. Heinif, then he waves it. Vehegish, and he touches it to the corner of the altar. Kamatz, and then he scoops it up. Vehiktir, and he takes off the lavona and he burns both of them. He burns the kmitz of the soas and the scoop of the lavona on the altar. Vashar, and the rest of it, the rest of the flour that wasn't scooped up, nechol kohanim, the kohanim could eat it. Mishekar of Omer, what was the whole point of the Omer? The whole point of the Omer was that the people can now eat from the new crops, but they were able to harvest it beforehand. From the moment they brought it, Yotzin umotzin shuk Yerushalayim shumoi kamak. You would go out they did it first thing in the morning, and right away they saw the whole markets of Jerusalem. It's like Motzei Pesach, when all of a sudden the pizza stores are serving pizza. They would go out and see that the markets of Jerusalem are filled with flour. Kelly, and it was also toasted. Shelo baratzon chachamim, and the sages weren't happy because the sages were upset that they were engaging in the crops before the bringing of the Omer, because they were concerned that maybe because you're engaging it, somebody would eat it. The sages didn't stop them. They had no problem because they said they weren't concerned that the people were going to eat from it. Okay, so that's the Daf Yomi. This is the Daf Yomi for tomorrow. I definitely cannot do the 6:30 a.m. Daf